What if the key to unlocking Toronto's championship window has been sitting right under Brad Treliving's nose this entire time, and the answer requires sacrificing the very insurance policy they fought so hard to acquire just months ago? The Toronto Maple Leafs find themselves in one of the most precarious positions in franchise history. After years of playoff disappointments and roster shuffling, they're staring down another season where championship expectations clash brutally with salary cap reality. But buried beneath all the Mitch Marner speculation and free agency frustration lies a fascinating paradox that could define their entire future. Brandon Carlo isn't just another defenseman on Toronto's blue line anymore. He's become their most valuable trading chip in a market where assets are scarce and desperation runs deep. The irony is almost painful when you really think about it. Less than a year ago, the Maple Leafs surrendered Fraser Minten and a precious first-round pick to Boston, viewing Carlo as the missing piece that would finally give Morgan Rielly the reliable partner he desperately needed. They saw him as insurance, protection, the steady hand that would anchor their defense through another playoff run. Now, he might be their ticket to everything they've been chasing. The mathematics of Toronto's situation are unforgiving. They're operating with minimal assets, a shrinking salary cap space, and a market that's been anything but generous to their needs. While other contenders have been busy adding pieces and strengthening their rosters, the Maple Leafs have been stuck in neutral, unable to make the moves that could push them over the edge. The clock isn't just ticking toward the regular season. It's thundering toward another year where they enter the playoffs with essentially the same core that has failed them repeatedly. But Carlo represents something different. At 6'5" and 2 at 18 pounds, he brings exactly what playoff hockey demands: size, grit, and an unwavering willingness to make life miserable for opposing forwards. He's not flashy, he's not going to dazzle anyone with highlight reel plays, but he's relentlessly effective in the way that championship teams require. More importantly, he's locked into one of the most team-friendly contracts in the entire league. Think about that for a moment. Carlo is earning just $3.48 million for the next 2 seasons. In today's NHL, where defensemen of his caliber routinely command twice that amount, his contract represents incredible value for any team looking to add legitimate playoff experience without breaking their salary structure. For contending teams, he's a top 4 defenseman at a bottom pair price. For rebuilding teams, he's a 28-year-old asset who could be flipped again down the road for even more value. This is where the Maple Leafs' dilemma becomes truly fascinating. NHL insider James Myrtle has identified exactly why Carlo has become such an intriguing trade candidate, and it's not just about his on-ice value. Toronto currently has 6 established NHL defensemen: Chris Tanev, Jake McCabe, Morgan Rielly, Carlo, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, and Simon Benoit. That's actually a luxury problem in a league where teams are constantly searching for reliable blue line depth. The issue is balance. The Maple Leafs have plenty of defensive-minded players, but they're still searching for that puck-moving specialist who can quarterback their power play and transition game effectively. Rumors are swirling about potential interest in free agent Matt Grzelcyk, whose skill set would perfectly complement what they already have. But adding Grzelcyk would create a numbers problem, making someone expendable. And when you're looking at who could generate the most return in a trade, Carlo stands out like a beacon. The strategic brilliance of potentially moving Carlo lies in understanding what other teams desperately need. Playoff hockey is won in the trenches, and every contending team knows they need players who can absorb punishment, clear the crease, and make life difficult for elite forwards. Carlo does all of that while bringing proven playoff experience from his time in Boston. He's not just theoretically tough. He's been battle-tested in the most pressure-packed situations the sport has to offer. But here's where things get complicated for Toronto. Trading Carlo would create its own set of problems that could undermine the very goal they're trying to achieve. He's been Rielly's most effective partner, providing the defensive stability that allows Toronto's star defenseman to focus on his offensive contributions. Remove Carlo, and suddenly you're either breaking up the successful Tanev-McCabe pairing or asking Simon Benoit to step into a role that might be beyond his current capabilities. It's a classic example of robbing Peter to pay Paul, except in this case, Peter might be holding the key to your entire defensive structure. The market dynamics make Carlo even more appealing to potential trade partners. Competitive teams see him as a missing piece who could push them over the edge without requiring a massive financial commitment. His contract makes him accessible to teams that might otherwise be priced out of the defenseman market. Meanwhile, rebuilding teams view him as a valuable asset who could be acquired relatively cheaply and potentially flipped for additional value as his contract progresses. For the Maple Leafs, this creates a perfect storm of opportunity and risk. They know they need to add offensive firepower if they want to finally break through their playoff ceiling. They also know their current asset pool is limited, making every potential trade piece incredibly valuable. Carlo represents their best chance to acquire a legitimate top-six forward without completely gutting their prospect system or future draft capital. The question becomes whether Brad Treliving has the courage to make such a bold move. Trading. Carlo would be betting that the offensive upgrade they receive in return would more than compensate for the defensive downgrade his departure would create. It's the kind of high-stakes gamble that defines successful general managers, but it's also the type of move that can backfire spectacularly if the calculations are wrong. What makes this situation even more intriguing is the timing. The Maple Leafs are clearly in win-now mode, but they're also facing the reality that their current construction hasn't been good enough when it matters most. Making a significant trade like this would signal a willingness to take calculated risks in pursuit of their ultimate goal, but it would also represent a fundamental shift in how they view their roster construction. The Carlo conundrum perfectly encapsulates everything that makes being a Maple Leafs fan both exhilarating and exhausting. Here's a player they fought to acquire, who has performed exactly as advertised, and who could be the key to unlocking the championship puzzle they've been trying to solve for decades. But accessing that key might require giving up the very security they thought they were buying when they brought him to Toronto in the first place. As we move closer to the start of another season, Brad Treliving faces decisions that could define his tenure and potentially alter the franchise's trajectory for years to come. Brandon Carlo sits at the center of it all, representing both the solution to their problems and a new set of challenges they'll have to navigate carefully. The ultimate question isn't whether Carlo has trade value. That's obvious to anyone who understands hockey markets. The real question is whether the Maple Leafs have the vision and courage to turn their most valuable trade asset into the missing piece that finally brings a Stanley Cup back to Toronto. In a few months, we'll know if they were willing to risk it all for one more shot at glory. What do you think? Is trading Carlo the bold move Toronto needs to finally break through, or would they be giving up too much defensive stability for an uncertain return? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and smash that like button if you're as fascinated by these front office chess matches as we are.